Information is critical. School children in remote areas hardly get access to good libraries. What more to the internet? All children, regardless of gender, economic, and social status, have the right to information, including SNT information. Information that would inspire them to become future doctors, inventors, engineers, entrepreneurs, researchers, and more. STII is here to bridge the information divide. STII, or the Science and Technology Academic and Research-based openly operated kiosks, is the first Philippine SNT digital library in a box with thousands of science and technology information materials from all over the world. Developed by the men and women of DOST-STII Science and Technology Information Institute in 2011, STII capsulized the DOST-STII's library into a digital box. Demand for this innovative and beneficial digital resource rose steadily, especially in economically marginalized schools and last-mile communities in the country. Through the years, STII has worked with key industry players, from collection to dissemination of information. These partners have worked together with STII in making a difference on how Filipinos view science and technology today. That is why award-giving bodies here and abroad have recognized STII's vital contributions to the society. As of October 2020, STII can be found in almost 4,900 sites in all 17 regions, staying true to its mission of reaching the grassroots. So, wherever you are in the country, whatever language you speak, and whether you're a student, a parent, a teacher, an employee, or a social worker, get ready for STII. Partner with us, and together, let us bring science for the people.
STII, as you know it, is an offline databank of science and technology information who once developed an online version for your PC and has evolved, this time, to conquer your mobile phones.
Introducing STII mobile apps. With your Android phone, experience the brightest STII yet.
Bringing you not just one, but 3 mobile applications. 1. Never mess with search engines again. Use the STII online mobile app. Access legit science and technology data from STII online wherever you are. Just connect to the internet. Download the app. Register at the sign-up page. Key in your details. Once done, all you've got to do on the main page is to simply click on the icons and explore the vast array of S&T info materials at your fingertips. Search all you want. It's also available with the STII online mobile app.
2. Take on the challenge. Take on the STII quiz. STII brings you the most sought-after exhibit at the National Science and Technology Week.
Students, teachers, parents, and science whizzes out there, download the STII quiz today. Choose your difficulty level. Have fun and learn science and technology stuff at the same time. Be the first to play the Starbucks quiz and take advantage of the gamified version coming soon. 3. Finding Starbucks has never been this easy with the Starbucks Geo Map. Ever wonder where and how many Starbucks there are exactly? This comprehensive map locates every single Starbucks site in a barangay, town, city, province, region, and in the whole country. You can even search for the nearest Starbucks like a good navigator you are. So if you love Starbucks and maps, download the Starbucks Geo Map. Now's the time to gear up your phone with the Starbucks mobile apps. Get them on Google Play. And don't forget to like Starbucks on Facebook. In an attempt to contain the spread of COVID-19, schools were temporarily closed. Students now learn from home. Demand for online learning resources shoots up. The question is, how much can you trust your information source? Fret not, for Starbucks is now online. Starbucks, or the science and technology, academic and research-based, openly operated kiosks, is an offline site with full suite science and technology information resources. Today, Starbucks has been tailored fit for you. The wealth of knowledge contained in the country's first S&T offline digital library in a box, now accessible online. Accessing information in Starbucks online is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Go to the Starbucks online portal via www.starbucks.ph. 2. Sign up by clicking the upper right portion of the main page. You will be directed to the login page. Click Sign Up here and key in your details. 3. Click Submit and you're on your way to enjoying Starbucks online. Imagine a mountain of learning resources, and there is Starbucks, a beaming gold on the internet scene. Contains tons of STI information that are fun, legit, and easy to dig. News to agriculture, to livelihood, and up to disaster preparedness. Say it! Starbucks has it! Try Starbucks online and take advantage of this free, full suite, and fingertip-ready access to the brightest Starbucks yet. Visit Starbucks online portal now and be at the forefront of science and technology information. Get to know Starbucks more. Like our Facebook page.
Bahad ni madam hun higatayan amin, gawis ay masdam and datako amin. Naimbag nga malam kada tayo amin. Maayong hapon sa inyong tanan. Magandang hapon, Pilipinas. Good afternoon, Philippines and all around the world. Thank you very much for joining us today in our webinar entitled Providing Access to Library Content in a Changing Environment. For our attendees using the Zoom platform, kindly inform your friends who are not able to enter the room to join us through our Facebook Live at facebook.com/STII Library. Should you have friends who were not able to receive our invitation, kindly inform them also to join us in the Facebook Live. Now, allow me to introduce myself. Okay, but before that, let me just know how we are feeling right now. Anong kulay po ang araw natin? Kindly go to, okay, before you go to Slido, ayan, kumusta po ang araw natin? You can just chat or sa ating mga Facebook Live viewers, you can comment. Kumusta po ang araw natin? Ayan, para malaman namin kung naririnig ninyo kami. Kumusta po ang araw natin ngayon? Okay, wala pa akong nababasa sa Facebook. How about in our chat room? Doing good. Oh, rainy afternoon. Ayan, so sa ibang parte ng mundo, it's rainy. Sa iba naman, maaraw. And for some, cloudy. Wow, nice. Okay naman, excited. That's nice. Okay, thank you so much. Now, please go to slido.com and input these numbers as the code 299604 and answer the question para malaman namin kung saan nanggaling ang ating mga participants ngayong hapon. Okay, again, kindly go to slido.com and input 299604 and answer our question. Okay. Ayan! Wow! Sorry. Can I share this one? Okay. Okay. Wait. So, mhm. I-share ko na lang to ng buo. Okay. Okay. So, nakikita nyo ba? Sorry. Okay. So, marami ang from Quezon City, Bulacan, Lucena City. We have from Bataan, Metro Manila, Laguna, Pampanga, Baguio City. Okay. Ayan. Bulacan. Nangunguna ang mga taga Bulacan. Wow. Amazing. Okay. So, we have here participants from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Okay. Wow. Ayan, there you go. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Okay, now allow me to introduce myself. I am Irene Alice Brillo, an Igorot from Kabayan Benguet, and honored to be your moderator for today. With me today are my team. When I say your name, kindly open your cam and wave. We have our division chief, Mr. Alan C. Taule, our supervising science research specialist and head librarian, Miss Linderlit M. Maglake. Hi, ma'am.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
Okay, we also have here our science research specialist one, Miss Luisa Marie C. Marquez.
Hi, good
We have,
afternoon.
okay. Hi, Miss Louie. We also have our science research analyst, Mr. Elmer Generalao. And we also have our technical support, Mr. Rainer Manumbali Zagada and Mr. Mark Jason Olvida, both computers operator 3 of the Information Technology Unit. We also have with us our Administrative Officer 2, Miss Maria Bernadette C. Medrano. Hi, Miss Bea. Also with us is our sign language interpreter, the beautiful Miss Maria Rodora Daef. Hi, ma'am. Thank you very much, Miss Roda, for accepting our invitation to join us. I would like also to acknowledge our SciNet members who are with us today. Thank you for joining. So we have participants once again from all around the Philippines, and we are very happy that you continuously support our webinars. For our consistent webinar participants since 2020, thank you for your continuous support. We hope that you will join us again in our future activities. Now, in order for us to have a smooth flow of this session, let me give you the following house rules. First, this webinar will be recorded for documentation purposes, and the recordings will be sent to your email address along with your e-certificates. In asking your question, that this is the second one, kindly use the Q&A chat box for our Zoom participants and use the comment box for our FB Live participants. You may start posting your questions while the talk or the presentation is ongoing. Third, DOST-STII will provide an e-certificate of attendance to all participants who successfully registered and submitted their accomplished evaluation form. The e-certificate of attendance will be sent through the email address you provided as mentioned, and this will be sent on or before October 12, 2021. Let me repeat, only those who will successfully register, finish the webinar, and accomplish the evaluation form that will be shown in the latter part of our session will be provided with a certificates. Just a gentle reminder that in posting your e-certificate online, kindly blur the signature. Finally, remember to be polite, pay attention, and actively participate. We will actually be giving out prizes later, so be attentive. Now, to formally welcome everyone to this event, we have with us today our highly respected director, Sir Richard P. Burgos.
Thank you, Irene. At magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Thank you for joining us and spending some of your afternoon with us in this learning and development session. Gusto ko yung title ng ating webinar today, Providing Access to Library Content in a Changing Environment. So sino sa inyo ang librarians? Taas po ang ilong. All right, how many are teachers? How many are researchers? How many are students? All right. So I see there are more than 548 people on the call on Zoom, and I'm sure more elsewhere. No? So welcome to all of you listening in to this webinar. So, changing environment. Ano ba talaga ang nangyari? What has changed? All right. So I think the pandemic provides a framework by which we can regard the changes that have surreptitiously or even patently impacted all of us. No? So for those of us in the educational sector, alam natin that distance learning has become the normal, the new normal. All right. Although we're trying to pilot now in certain areas the face-to-face delivery of educational content. No? So many things are changing. And because of that, we are also confronted with many challenges. All right. So not least of which is connectivity. So for those of you who will log off or log in again, that's part of the new challenges that we are facing. Hindi po ba? All right. So we've also seen how really the technology that's enabling all of these changes, which is the internet, is also the same technology that is fueling our charge towards the fourth industrial revolution. Are we ready for that? I think we have to be ready for that. And this is where I see the rise in the value of the role of information brokers, okay? Because all of a sudden we find ourselves swimming in a world of free information, okay? There is so much available, free of charge information that is available to all, any time of the day and night, okay? And that is why we need information brokers to help searchers for information, to provide them with a nutshell context of the information that they may need, and to provide them and to direct them to the right sources of information. Okay? So, the other offshoot of this great surge in available free information is that we actually need also to always be aware that we have to have trusted sources of information. Because we need to verify whether the information that we have access to is something that is correct, right? Ang dami natin pino-forward ng mga posts ngayon, and many times, and I've been guilty of this also, we forward the wrong information, unvalidated, unverified, mali pala. All right? Wrong attribution. So, hindi correct. All right? And sometimes, the challenge is with the completeness of the information. You forward something, one thing, kulang pala yun ng tatlo. All right? So, in a way, mali rin siya. Okay? The other thing that we need to verify is the context of the information, because sometimes information that we share is devoid of context and therefore loses a lot of meaning. Okay. So yun ang challenge natin as information brokers. Okay. Now, add to that the physical restrictions of the pandemic. Okay. You cannot go out, you cannot buy this, you cannot do that. Right? There's so many things that have been restricted from us. But let me tell you this, the pandemic may have locked us up, but it has never locked down a number of things. And I begin with the first C, which is compassion. Pandemic, all right, has opened our eyes that there is so much need in the world. And if we are attending this webinar right now in the comfort of our home or our office, we are just so lucky. There is so much need and suffering out there. So we need to exercise compassion. The other thing that the lockdown has not locked up is creativity. Why are we doing this webinar? It's really a creative way around delivering our service to the public, which cannot come anymore to our library physically, but we can reach out to them through webinars like this, through our presence on the internet, through our presence on mobile apps, for example. So creativity is something that cannot be locked down. The other thing is courage to do the right thing. All right. There's a lot of suffering, as mentioned, that's happening around us, and we can just watch it pass us by. But I think as responsible citizens, as people who care for other people, we have to do something. We have to exercise the courage to do the right thing. Okay. Next, the pandemic also has not locked down critical thinking. We're not just following because somebody said so. We continue to evaluate information, even directives, all right, and be critical about them, okay? Only in this manner can we assure that we become responsible citizens and members of our community, all right? So I mentioned compassion, creativity, courage to do the right thing, and critical thinking. Critical thinking, diba? How many of you received that information that if you get vaccinated, you will become a zombie? And if you pass that on, you spread the fear, okay? So parang, unless na lang nakita mo sa mirror, and what you saw in the mirror was the face of a zombie, all right? So let's be critical. Lastly, we cannot lock down collaboration, right? We need to work together with other people. That's why I'm very happy that today we are here and we have experts even from the UP library. So thank you very much to our resource person, all right? Mr. Paul Jason Perez of the UP SLIS. Thank you very much. Also to our sign language facilitator, Rhoda, we can always stop with and count on her assistance. No? So we collaborate. And that is what makes our experiences through the pandemic more meaningful and responsive, okay? So the webinar also is part of our learning and development initiatives at DOST-STII as we try to bring up the competencies of our employees, But we also want to expand this, reach out to people at large, teachers, researchers, learners, information brokers, all of you who are here. Okay, and there are now 611 on 13 on this Zoom call. So again, welcome to all of you. All right, so the webinar, of course, wants to identify best practices in data collection, management, curation, accessibility, etc. But we also want to evaluate current and emerging trends in digital data management and, of course, application of these to our current operations. Thirdly, we want to establish access procedures and to implement access policies conforming to our established licenses and other agreements. So there are many things that we will be going through this afternoon. But I'd like to link this event to a bigger event coming down the road. So in November, from November 8 to 11, we will be celebrating the 31st Library and Information Services Month, okay, with a series of events. So some of the contests today are related to that event down the road, okay? So I really hope that this afternoon will be a sort of like an enjoyable learning event for all of us, and that our takeaways will help us become better librarians and researchers and students and teachers, and also better citizens of our country as we commit to become information brokers that can provide information in the right context, information that is correct, and information that is complete. So again, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat at maraming salamat sa pakikiisa ninyo sa aming initiative. Thank you very much and stay safe.
Thank you very much for that very warm welcome and nuggets of wisdom, Sir Richard. Indeed, with information explosion, fake news is also on the rise. So we need to learn how to vet or how to validate the information that we are reading before we forward this information to others. And let me just repeat what Sir Richard said. Even with the lockdown, we should not supposed to lack these things. We need compassion. We need to exercise our creativity. We need to have the courage to do what is right. And we also need critical thinking. And finally, we should continue and strive to collaborate. Okay, thank you so much once again, Sir Richard. Before we proceed to our session proper, may I again request that you kindly inform your friends who are not able to join our Zoom platform to join our Facebook Live at facebook.com/STII Library. Shout out po sa aming Facebook Live viewers. Okay, all participants, both in Zoom and in the Facebook Live will be provided with a certificate provided that you accomplish our feedback form. You may start posting your question while the talk is ongoing. So, are we ready for the session proper? Ayan, kindly chat Aja kung ready na kayo. Hey. Aja. Okay, so since I think everyone is already excited today, may we open our ears and our minds to listen and understand how we can be able to provide access to information and information sources in this changing or shifting world. May I call on Ms. Linderlit M. Maglake, our Supervising Science Research Specialist, to introduce our resource speaker.
So again, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. It is my pleasure to introduce our resource speaker for this afternoon, who is going to talk to us about research data management. So our research speaker, Professor Paul Jason B. Perez, is a full-time faculty member of the University of the Philippines School of Library and Information Studies, where he teaches introductory courses on LIS, ICT, and programming. Before joining the school, he worked as a senior technical associate for UP Information Technology Development Center, where he was involved in implementing an information system across the different campuses of the university. He finished his Bachelor of Library and Information Science from the same school. In 2019, he completed his Master of Digital Information Management from the University of Technology, Sydney, through the Australia Award Scholarship. His current research interests include freedom of information, open data, digital assets management, and research data management. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our resource speaker, Professor Paul Jason B. Perez.
Maraming salamat po for that introduction, Ma'am Linder. And I would also like to thank si Miss Irene, and also thank you to the Division Chief, Mr. Taule, to the DOST-STII Director, Dr. Burgos, and of course to the amazing team of the STII Library and of the DOST-STII. Maraming salamat din po sa lahat ng members ng SciNet na nakasali ngayon sa ating Zoom meeting, and also to all our viewers here in the Zoom and also sa Facebook Live. Good afternoon to everyone, and I'm very happy that you're joining us this afternoon. I hope that this will be a fruitful afternoon to all of us. So let me share my screen. Okay, so good afternoon to everyone. I have here a presentation which also have some Slido component no para po interactive tayo. No? So if you have your phones with you, or if you have a browser open, please go to slido.com and type in the codes 618947. You can also scan the code that you're seeing on your screens, and there will be some questions later, no, and I will really appreciate your input. So just to practice, sige nga, may I know which one best describes you? Okay, so we have a lot of librarians and information professionals from the audience. We also have students, teachers, researchers, and teachers and students. I also would like to know which of the following domains would you say your research or work falls under? Do you belong in the medical sciences or the natural sciences, or maybe you are supporting a lot of different domains? No? Others, baka multiple domains, or uh, highly specialized. But as I can see, a lot of you are from the social sciences, okay? Ayan. Thank you so much for responding. I'm seeing a lot of responses. All right. And then finally, I want to ask you, do you have a data repository in your institution? Yes, no, I don't know. So if this is the first time that you've heard of data repository, the simplest definition would be a system where you can get research data for another purpose. No? So you can look this up for research data. But later on, I'll talk more about this. Wow. Okay. So it's really good to hear that a lot of you answered yes. No, in some way, meron tayong data repository. So this talk will be really relevant for you. Ayun. Okay, so maraming salamat. And of course, it's also fine if you don't have a data repository in your institution. The purpose of this talk is also to get you acquainted with the different uh, repositories that are available out there. And for those who doesn't know, this will also be a useful talk for you. Yun. So maraming salamat for participating in that short poll. There will also be questions later, so please keep your devices handy. My talk will be about supporting our users through research data management. And I know that the theme of this webinar is about providing access to information. And this talk will be a challenge to everyone, no? That as librarians and information professionals, what are the things that we can do aside from providing access to information? And I'll explain more of that later. So why research data management? So as I've mentioned, no, the theme of this talk is about providing access to information, but I want to challenge everyone and look at the bigger perspective that as librarians and information professionals, we do not just provide access to information, but rather we are partners in the knowledge production. And as you will see later, the research data management paradigm or the frameworks that are available in research data management provides a holistic view of the things that we can do to assist researchers and users in knowledge production. So every step of the research activity, meron po tayong magagawa as librarians and information professionals. And who am I? So as was introduced earlier, no, ako po si Paul Jason Perez. I'm an assistant professor from the UP School of Library and Information Studies. And I was very fortunate enough to have the experience to study at the University of Technology Sydney, where I experienced firsthand how to manage data and also to see how they are doing research data management. And ever since, isa na po yun sa mga naging advocacies ko, and some of the things that I'm passionate about is open data and having research data management services from librarians. No? So I'll get to talk more of that later. And I want to mention right away the references for my presentation. Some of the contents of this presentation came from the Digital Curation Center from the UK and also from the Research Data Management Librarian Academy, and also from the Research Data Management and Sharing course from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, SILS, and the University of Edinburgh. I'll be providing the links later by the end of the presentation. So what will I be talking about? It's a good place to start would be the definition. So we'll have a definition of what research data is and what research data management is. And then we'll have some few frameworks on research data management and talk about why they are important. But most of the majority of this presentation will focus on the different activities and phases of the data lifecycle. So that includes data creation, documentation, use, storage, sharing, and preservation. And then finally, ito, exciting to, what can librarians do and what can information professionals do to support our users? And if you're watching right now and you are a student or you're a researcher or you're a faculty member, this talk will also be beneficial for you, especially if you're interested how you can make your research more efficient in terms of managing your data. And also, I just would like to add that with our changing environment, no, a lot of us are doing remote learning or we cannot do face-to-face activities. And it really affects our research activity, especially if you need to generate data, and if you need to conduct face-to-face activities just to look for data or generate data, then the research data management framework will help us. Especially the tools and resources will help us conduct our research in this new changing environment. So hopefully makatulong siya sa atin. Okay, so back to our Slido. I want to know what you think of when you hear research data. Ano po ba sa tingin nyo ang research data? So if you are still on Slido, the code is 618947. When you hear research data, ano ba ang research data? Anong mga examples ang naiisip ninyo? Ang code po natin for Slido is 618947. You can also scan the QR code that you're seeing on the screen. Okay, so yan, meron tayong mga answers. So for example, these are figures, recorded facts, statistics, yeah, information collected, interviews, raw data, audio tapes, statistics. Yan, sobrang dami, no? Sobrang dami. Non-digital formats, collected and validated information. Yan, so a lot of us have an idea of what research data is. Yan, maraming salamat. You will also get a copy of the responses when I share the presentation later. So keep on posting your question or your responses. Here's a definition provided by the National Institutes of Health from the United States. So according to them, research data are recorded factual material commonly accepted in the scientific community as necessary to validate research findings. No, so some important concepts here would be recorded factual material. So ibig sabihin, it exists in a media and it can be validated by the community. So hindi lang po pang individual or sa sarili nyo lang na team yung research data. And that is also echoed by the National Science Foundation, also from the United States, that said research data are determined by the community of interest through the process of peer review and project management. So research data is, again, not just an individual or a research team endeavor, but it is for the scientific community. And as you will see later, why that definition is so important. Yun. Examples of research data, some of which you've already given earlier. So number one, naisip natin kagad, di ba? Statistics, numbers, figures. It can also be images or maps, or it can also be some source code, no? Like for example, a Python script that you use to extract data or clean data. It can also be HTML pages or research abstracts if you're doing a literature review. It can also be video recordings or interview transcripts, publications. There's no way that this list is an exhaustive list. There can be so many types of research data depending on your field of study and depending on the type of study that you are doing. As long as these research data are recognized by the community that you're working with, then we can call this as research data. So now that we know what research data is, why should we manage? Why do you think are the benefits of managing research data? Yep, for easy retrieval, especially if you're working with a team. For future use, improve research integrity, ano pa, to be organized because it can give an answer to our research, data reuse, okay, improve the research activity to help students for easy retrieval. Ayun, maraming salamat. Again, thank you. A lot of you have the correct idea. So keep on sending your responses para po ma-share natin to everyone. Ayan, providing clear objectives to your research, to improve research activities. Ayun, so maraming salamat po. So yeah, there's a lot of benefits and reasons why we should manage data. And number one is reproducibility. And reproducibility is a very important uh, concept, especially in cumulative sciences, like for example, the medical sciences field or the natural sciences. I'm sure you're familiar with the term "we are standing on the shoulder of giants." Diba? We only progress as a society because we build on the works of those who came before us, of the works of others. So however, in science, according to this Nature article by Monia Baker, there is a crisis, a reproducibility crisis. So what this means is that researchers were not able to reproduce or validate the research output of other scientists. And not only that, they're also having problems not just reproducing the works of others, but also reproducing their own research, no, using their own data. Sarili na nilang data yon, but they have to use it for another research or they want to validate what they've done before. Hindi nila magawa, no? So bakit kaya? One of the main reasons, of course, is the lack of proper research data management. And also another reason for research data management is reuse. So a lot of you have mentioned this, no, data reuse. So a study by Pienta et al. In 2010 stated that data sharing doesn't just benefit. No, this is in the field of social sciences that there is a strong, consistent evidence that data sharing increases research productivity across a wide range of publication metrics. So in their study, they found out that by sharing data, they were able to increase the number of publications based on that same research data, which makes sense, di ba? Kasi if you're not going to share your research data, then of course, ikaw lang yung nakakaalam nun. Yung publication mo lang yung magka-count. But if you share it to the community, there's a chance that other researchers will be able to produce a publication out of the same data. And this also echoed by Prompt in 2019. And the researcher said that time efficient science is not the only benefit of data reuse, but it also benefits people outside the scientific community, like, for example, policymakers, teachers, and other members of the general public. Diba? Kasi research data is not just for the academics, not just for the researchers, but also is most importantly for our policymakers kasi sila po yung gumagawa ng mga batas. They affect our everyday lives. So research data is very important for them. And some of you have also mentioned research integrity. This is true. A study by Nuranabi and Hussein in 2019, where they looked at 39 retracted articles. I believe this is from the early 2000s up to 2019. Some of the reasons why these publications were retracted is because they have falsified data or some issues about the data that they use. And that is crucial, no? Because imagine if there is a very important research about COVID vaccines, for example, and then that was published, and then a lot of other researchers used that as their or cited that research, but it turned out falsified pala yung kanyang data. So research integrity is a serious business in the scientific community. So through research data management, we can detect falsification of data, and we hopefully we can lessen cases on fabrication and falsification of data. And then, of course, finally, the right of the people to know, especially if the research that you're doing is funded by the public, or if your funding agency, for example, is DOST, diba? So it's a government, or if your university is a public university, then there should be more uh, drive for you to share your data to the general public. Of course, provided that you uh, anonymize the data, provide that we protect human data, which I'll also discuss later. So again, those are some of the benefits and arguments why we should manage our research data. Okay, so now let's move on to what is research data management. So now that we know that what research data is and why we should manage it, let's look at research data management. Based from Thibault and Jones in 2017, these are activities and practices that support long-term preservation, access, and use of data. That is another similar definition, excuse me, is provided by Venkatamaran in 2019. It is the active management and appraisal of data over the life cycle of scholarly and scientific interests. So what's common with these definitions is that research data management is active management. No? So that means hindi lang po siya basta policy that you will create, not just a document that you will share to your researchers, to your users na eto yung kailangan yung gawin. Ito yung kailangan yung sundin. But rather, this is an active management. We have to collaborate with our researchers, guide them, train them, provide support on what they can do throughout the life cycle of the scholarly and scientific research or interest. And perhaps a better way for us to understand what research data management is through research data management frameworks. And I love looking at frameworks because it gives us a big picture, and it also guides us on what a concept is about. So let's look at some of the research data management frameworks that are available out there. One of the common framework is from the Data One data life cycle. So Data One is data observation network for the Earth. So obviously this came from the environmental sciences, but this framework is applicable to any domain, even the social sciences and the humanities. So from what you can see in this life cycle, you can see that this is a series of phases or activities, and it is cyclic in nature. So it is iterative, and if you're going to read the reference in this resource later, you'll find out that these activities are guides. You don't have to go through each of the activities, but they serve as guide for us to see what are the activities involved during the life cycle of data. So from planning, collecting, hanggang ma-analyze, magamit yung data ng mga researchers. So this is a very useful framework. Another framework, this one is also a popular framework from the Digital Curation Center, or the DCC Data Lifecycle Model. So from the picture, it looks complex, but it actually paints a complete picture of what is involved in data management. So from here at the center is the data, which can be a digital object, any digital object, or a database, a collection of digital objects. And after that are activities that has to be performed throughout the life cycle of data, and that includes description, representation of information, preservation planning, community watch and participation, and curation and preservation. So those activities has to be performed throughout the research life cycle. So from planning hanggang matapos yung research. There are also sequential activities, like for example, yung create, appraise, ingest, preservation, store, access, and transform. So these are sequential activities that has to be performed. And there are also occasional activities such as reappraisal, migration, and dispose. Sometimes you reappraise to reevaluate if this data is still beneficial, or do we still have to share this data, or maybe we have to dispose this data. So these activities are this framework is very useful because it will cover not just the work of the researchers, but also of the librarians and the information professionals. So it brings together this community of researchers and data management professionals from these different activities. And then another framework is the Oxford RDM Lifecycle from the University of Oxford Research Data Management Service Group. This is, I also like this framework because it's simpler. You can see that at the very heart of the framework is providing training, advice, and support. And there are three phases, which are data management planning, data backup and security, data sharing, and archiving. So during these phases, there are some considerations. Like, for example, where will you deposit your data? Are there content or data management plans? And so on and so forth. No? So bakit ganyan? No? Bakit may mga frameworks? Which framework should we use? To be honest, it really doesn't matter which framework you should use, because it will depend with your institution if you have a data management policy or a research data policy, or it will also depend on your field. If you're a researcher in the medical sciences, meron kayong sinusunod na field. It can also depend on the funding agency, sino ba yung nagfa-fund ng inyong research. But what's important is that you should have a framework, no, at least one. No, you should have a framework, because that will ensure and that will guide us that we can cover the whole life cycle, no, that we are not missing anything. So with that, I would like to present a simplified version of the DCC life cycle, and this will be the focus of this presentation. We'll look at the different activities throughout the data life cycle and ano yung mga tools, best practices, and resources that we can use to support these different activities. These activities are creation, documentation, usage, storage, sharing, and preservation of research data. So let's start with the creation. During the creation process, if you are a researcher or you're a librarian supporting data management services, these are the things that we need to consider right away. Now, we need to ask for consent. We need to choose the appropriate data format and adopt a file naming convention. Sometimes hindi natin to naiisip, but as you go down the road of your research, you'll realize how important these things are, especially if you're going to share your research data. So number one is ask for consent. Here in the Philippines, we have the RA 10173, or also known as the Data Protection Act of 2012. And in Section 16, under the rights of the data subject, it says that we have the rights, the data subjects have the right to be informed. Specifically, we need to inform them the purposes for which their data are being or are to be processed. And I think napansin nyo to, no, whenever there are researchers or students doing their survey via Google Form, meron silang consent, no, that uh, they're getting our data and how are they going to use it. However, hindi siya masyadong specific for research data sharing. No, we have to be specific. So some examples later indicates, like for example, you have to mention that you will be depositing the research data in this repository, and at the same time you will be removing personal information in your data. So you have to inform your data subjects that that's what you're going to do after, no, after your research. And this informed consent is also a requirement for some of the data repositories that I will be mentioning later. Now, some data repositories will not accept your research data if you were not able to get informed consent from your data subjects. Yep, meron nag-comment dito, research ethics. That's very important, especially now that very pervasive yung data, no? And some universities have IRBs or research boards. And I hope na lahat ng university meron ganun, especially if you're a research university. An example, a guide was developed by the Australian National Data Service. So this is a 3-decision guide, no, that you can ask yourself whether or not you can share your research data, because there may be instances wherein you were not able to obtain informed consent from your participants. So there is still a way for you to share research data kahit hindi kayo nakapag-obtain ng informed consent. And also, there may be instances wherein obtaining informed consent is impractical. No, so there are some situations where doing that is impractical. So this decision 3, the link is provided here. If you look at it later, you'll see there are questions here. Do you have the right to publish? Can the data be made non-sensitive? Or was consent for data sharing given by research participants? If not, then was it approved for publication by the ethics committee? No, so that's why ethics committee are really important. And if you want to look for some templates, there are some templates provided by the Institute for Social Research at the University of Michigan. There's also one by the Library of London School of Economics and Political Science, especially for social science research. And if you are in the medical field, a good example is from the MRC Brain and Cognition Sciences Unit of Cambridge University. So all of the links will be provided to you sa presentation. So after you have chosen, after you have obtained or decided about the informed consent, another important consideration during the creation of your data, of your research data, would be to choose the appropriate data format. No? Are we going to store the images in a lossy or lossless format? So when you hear lossy, that means there are some bits of ones and zeros that are not being preserved, while lossless, every bit is preserved. No, there are benefits and disadvantages of doing that. For example, lossy format for images would be a JPEG image, diba? We can store our research data in JPEG because it will consume less storage. However, it is lossy. So as you save and save it, some bits are going to be missing. No. And are you going to use an open or proprietary format? Like, for example, if we're going to save our data in XLSX or Microsoft Excel, so that format is proprietary as opposed to an open format like comma separated value or CSV. So to guide us on the appropriate data format, there are actually a lot of guidelines out there. So one good guideline is from the UK Data Service, wherein they provide the recommended formats. So if you're a researcher or kung librarian kayo and then there's a researcher na lumapit sa inyo, they want guidance, what data format is best for my research data. So for example, if you're handling quantitative tabular data with minimal metadata, then you can save it in a CSV file. But if you're using a lot of metadata, then there is the SPSS portable format. The best formats are open source formats and lossless formats. So when you hear lossless, again, it preserves all the bits. And then finally, you also need to decide, no, what's the file naming convention? For your team research data, siguro no, and you're expected to share your research data, then there are some guidelines. No? What are the best practices in file naming? So you have to keep it short, but at the same time, you have to provide context like, is this from an experiment or is this just a README file? And then avoid using special characters like for example yung mga ampersand or the at symbol because it may fail in some systems na baka hindi siya ma-process ng computers. And you also have to be consistent with your convention and preferably use standards. Like for example, there is an ISO standard for representing date and time. So a good guide is from the MIT Libraries Data Management Services. So from here, you can see some of the best practices. Like for example, in terms of length, we have it's best if we can limit the file name into 32 characters. So as you can see, if it's 32 characters, then the file will look like this. So madali siya tingnan. And also, if it's too long, some computers may not be able to process that file. And again, don't use spaces or special characters. Preferably use underscores or camel case. So camel case is when you capitalize the first letter of the beginning of the new word. And then again, be consistent with the standards. Like for example, a date format would be year followed by the month followed by the date. And this is a very handy format because you can easily sort your files if you name it this way. Then also use leading zeros to allow for multiple digit versions. So versioning is very important. There are a lot of other guides out there make sure that you are following a convention within your research team, and also in consideration of other people. Okay, so that is creation. The next phase is document. Now we have to document our data, how we're using our data, how we collected our data, how we produce our data. And this documentation is also part of your research data. You have to share this later. No? And if you're a researcher, this is probably, sometimes you may see this as dagdag trabaho. Parang, ano ba yan? I have to document this, or maybe I can ask somebody else to document it. So this is where librarians and information professionals can come in. No? We can provide training and support on how to properly document research data. So in documenting, the most important question is, what is needed so that your data will be understood and used by others? So in short, what is the context of your data? Like, who collected the data, what is the data for, when was it collected, why it was collected, why it was produced, di ba? Yung mga when, yung mga W questions. How then, very important. So this context should be provided along with the actual data, with the research data. In order to do that, there are some things that we can do. Like, for example, we have to provide README files, data dictionaries, data cookbooks, and of course, very important, forte ito ng mga librarians and information professionals, metadata and shared vocabularies. So in terms of README files, no, it's best that we provide a text, just a .txt file for a cluster of data. So a good practice would be, for each folder, there is a README file describing the contents of that folder, or for a cluster of files and folder. Meron kayong at least one README file for related files. And the Cornell Research Data Management Service Group provided this template that you can use. So for example, in this template, there is a title of the data set. Then there's also author information, who is the principal investigator, their name, institution, address. So this is a guide for you to create better README files. No? So make sure that the README file is in the text format, .txt or .html, any open format. No, avoid using .doc, which is a proprietary format. Aside from README files, there's also data dictionaries, which is very, very useful. Usually, you will see this at the first sheet of a spreadsheet. Diba? Kung meron kayong spreadsheet, yung pinakauna, it's the data dictionary. The purpose of the data dictionary is to explain what each field is. So for example, you can see here, this shows anong tab nung spreadsheet. There's a description, ano yung name nung element na yon, and what type of data that is. So for example, it is variable character, or an integer, or a date, and the length of that data. So this is very useful. This is metadata, data about the data. This is an example from the US Department of Agriculture Data Commons. So if you go to this link, they have a lot of guides on how to write data dictionaries. And then aside from that, there's also data cookbooks. So bakit cookbook? You can think of recipe. Di ba? If you have a recipe, you have a series of steps so that the ingredients will turn into this sumptuous dish. Di ba? So that's The same with cookbooks, because with data, there's a lot of processing that we do. Data is unclean, 'di ba? We have to manipulate it, we have to reformat it so that it can be useful for analysis. And if you're going to share the data, then you also have to share the recipe or the steps that you have performed so that other people will be able to reproduce the same analysis, no, or validate your analysis. And some tools that you can use, for example, are Jupyter notebooks. So these are open source and free uh, software, and usually ginagamit siya ng mga data scientists to share their codes. So in a Jupyter notebook, it is a combination of documentation and actual codes, probably in Python or R or other scripting languages that can manipulate the data. Another tool is Colab by Google. So this is also free. It's basically the same as a Jupyter notebook, but it is available in your Google Drive. So you can easily share it, no, right away. I'm just looking at the comments here. Ayan, good afternoon then. Okay. So aside from cookbooks, uh, another important consideration when documenting is, of course, metadata. No? Metadata, these are data about data. Usually we hear that, but metadata is very important because it provides context to the data that you're using. And also, it will be helpful if you are using the metadata or vocabulary within your field, no? Because there are general purpose metadata. For example, Dublin Core, mods, and schema.org. If you haven't heard of those, don't worry. Ang ibig sabihin lang po niyan, these are ways that you can describe objects. Like for example, in Dublin Core, there is creator, who's the creator, what's the description, what's the date. Yun. So those are metadata. And if you're working in a specific field, like for example, if you're in the biological sciences and you're just starting out as a researcher, or you have no idea what metadata you're going to use, then you can consult the metadata directory curated by the Research Data Alliance. No? So this is a very handy tool. I'm clicking on the link and hopefully I can show you. Am I still sharing the my screen? Nakikita niyo po yung website.
No, sir. We only see the document metadata.
Ayan, sorry. So I'm stopping the sharing and I'm sharing again my whole screen. There you go. So this is the website of the RD Alliance, or a website created by the RD Alliance, which is a directory of the metadata. So how are you going to use this? So for example, merong lumapit sa inyo na researcher, and then nagpa-consult siya ng kanyang data, and you see in kulang yung metadata niya. Meron lang siyang name and description. So you can look at browse by subject areas and then identify, is this researcher from the archaeology department or are they from bioinformatics? So if you click on it, you will see what are the standards in that particular field. Of course, as librarians, you're not expected to master all of these different metadata. That's impossible because there's so many. No, at the minimum, we should be familiar with the general purpose metadata. You will see here there are general purpose, like as I mentioned, Dublin Core. Yan is very useful. And most of the time, the researchers, they are the experts. No, they may be familiar with this one. So, but just in case they are not, no, then we can redirect them here to look at this metadata directory. They should use standards because that will be easier for them to share their metadata to other people. Like, for example, if they're working in the medical sciences, should they use weight or should they use mass, no, for their recordings of their data? Uh, there's probably a standard that they can follow depending on what specific field within the medical sciences. So we need to guide them and promote the use of standard metadata. So after the documentation, the next part is use, no? So with use, dito na papasok yung mga researcher. They are the expert in their field. And this is the part where they analyze the data, where they use their research data. But that doesn't mean na wala tayong maiitulong as librarians and information professionals. In fact, there's a lot of things that we can do and that are being done around the world. For example, we can ask what software are available for data analysis and what data skills or training are needed. So what we can do as librarians that we can provide a live guide of the software analysis subscription of the software that we have as an institution, or also provide open source tools that the researchers can use. There is the librarycarpentry.org. I don't know if some of you have attended a workshop before. This is some sort of a movement na rin na nangyayari within the library community. Uh, a lot of libraries, especially in the Western countries, they are doing library carpentry. The purpose of these workshops is to provide data literacy and data skills amongst librarians, and also to train them on how to train others, no, especially the members of the academic community. If you're going to visit the website, librarycarpentry.org, you will see there a list of workshops that are happening globally. So some of the workshops can be attended by anyone, while others are just exclusive for their own library staff. Uh, in UPSLIS, we're hoping to do a library carpentry in the near future. So some of the activities that we do that are usually done in a library carpentry would be how to use data cleaning tools like OpenRefine, no, or how to use spreadsheets. And some even go to data analysis, like how to use R and Python, because those skills are very important. You can use that in your work, but also you can use that to train, no, students, especially if they are just beginning. And that will lessen the burden sa ating mga professors, di ba? They don't have to do that during the classroom. They can just focus on their subject matter. And while we, the librarians, were supporting or equipping our research community. So try to visit po yung library carpentry. A lot of libraries are conducting their own carpentry workshop. And then after the use, another consideration would be storage, no? Where are we going to store our data? If you're just an individual researcher, do you just store it in your laptop? What if mag-crash yung laptop mo, no? Or if you're a team, how can you ensure that every member of the team will have access and will have the correct permission in accessing data, research data? So some considerations would be these questions. We need to ask these questions. Where will the data be stored? How sensitive is the data? So in other countries, they have laws about sensitive data. Like for example, in Australia, they have a policy on Australian eyes only. So ibig sabihin nun, if there's data about the citizens regarding their health or financial information, only citizens or only Australian citizens have the right to view that. So hindi mo siya pwedeng i-share sa non-citizen of that country. So if that data is sensitive, then you should think of how you're going to share it, no, via cloud or through storage devices. And then we have to clarify the meaning of backup versus archiving. So during this stage of the data lifecycle, when we say storage, we are pertaining to the active life of the data. So that means your data is still being used by the research team. No, hindi pa sila tapos mag-analyze, but you need to store it, of course, because it may be a huge amount of data. And then if you're still using it, if you're still actively using it, then you should provide a backup. Because what if something happened, diba? What if there's flood or power outages that may corrupt the data? So you should provide a backup. And then once you're done, once you're sure that you're completed, once the research has ended, then that's the time for archiving, which I'll discuss more later. So in terms of backup, there is a uh, rule of thumb. I don't know if you've heard of it, the 3-2-1 rule, wherein you have to have at least 3 copies of your data. So one is the original, and then you have 2 backup. So that's 3 copies of data in at least 2 different media. So one can be stored in a hard disk, and then another one can be stored via cloud with at least one that is offsite. So 1 copy should be away from your own premises. No, so this is a rule of thumb. So that's why cloud storage solutions are becoming attractive because it can already satisfy yung different media and offsite requirement. But usually if it's on the cloud, it resides halfway across the globe, and there are backup servers that will ensure the reliability, availability of your data. But this is a good rule of thumb. No, if you have important research data, make sure that you have at least 3 copies in at least 2 different media, with at least one that is offsite. And then if you're considering cloud services, no, you need to know if your institution have subscription to these services because they can be expensive. We know that, but if you don't have a subscription, these are the cloud services and their limits on the free storage. So, for example, Dropbox has a limit of 2 GB, while Google Drive 15 GB. So, some considerations if you don't have a subscription. You can also take a look at the Open Science Foundation, or the OSF.io. This is increasingly becoming popular among researchers to collaborate when doing research. And it doesn't just support storage. No? If you go to the website, bisitahin natin. The website is osf.io. You can sign up for free. No, dito. This is created by the Open Science Foundation, and they promote open knowledge. So they're all for open access and collaborative work. So in this platform, what you can do is you can discover other research projects. You can also create the research project and collect and analyze data and even publish your report. No, some researchers hindi na sila nagpa-publish. They publish preprints. No, yung mga hindi pa na paper review. They can use the Open Science Foundation. In fact, merong LIS preprint that exists within OSF. If you're familiar with that, if you look at the menu, you can see that there is OSF preprints. So nagiging host na rin siya ng mga preprints. If you're not familiar with preprints, these are research articles or publications that are not yet submitted to uh, peer-reviewed journals. And the reason why they are being published as a preprint is because they may be gathering some feedback from the community, or probably meron pa silang ongoing research or something. But this is still a recognized, a highly recognized source of research production, of research output. So if you're going to log in within OSF, it has links to Google Drive and Dropbox. So in that way, you can actually use OSF as a portal for you to store your research data and collaborate with other researchers. Okay, so we're more than halfway sa ating uh, research data lifecycle. The next phase is share. No? So once we are done with our research activity, we need to think about how we're going to share our research data. And the most important consideration that we have to address is how are we going to license our data? Most of the time, it will depend on your institution or your funding agency. So again, if your funding agency is uh, government, then usually they have a requirement that you submit a data management plan, which I'll talk about later. And part of that plan is how are you going to license your data? So in the open science community, it is highly encouraged that we publish our data in the Creative Commons licenses. No? So Creative Commons is a way for us to share our output, but at the same time recognizing and preserving some of the rights. Like for example, if you license your data under the CC BY license that you're seeing here, then that means that other users are able to copy and publish, to use it for commercial use, to modify and adapt it, and even to change that license when they're sharing it. But at the same time, they have to add to provide attribution, or ibig sabihin they have to cite you as the researcher. Ang pinaka non-restrictive, of course, is if you publish your data in the public domain, which means you don't have to be attributed. But sometimes, in order for us to encourage researchers to share their research data, is to recognize their work, because producing data is very difficult, diba? That's a lot of work, and sometimes it's expensive. And other institutions, other universities are already recognizing data citations, diba? So that's another argument for our academics to encourage them, diba? Kasi some institutions might be obsessed with the number of citations, or yung H-index na tinatawag, di ba, sa Google. So, usually it's citations about their published research, but data can also be cited, no? And it should count towards your scholarly work, because data is very valuable, especially if it's a well-described data. So these are some of the licenses that you may consider. But then again, this will still depend on the funding agency or your institutional policy about sharing research data. But of course, provided that you anonymize, no, your research data if you're working with human subjects. Okay, and then finally, we'll go dun sa archiving or preserving your research data. This happens towards the end of the research activity. If you're already done, you already publish the research, or you already submitted a report about the research, then consider archiving your data. And how are we going to do that? So the first question is, you need to de-identify or anonymize your data, especially if you are working with human subjects. So I cannot emphasize this enough. No, this is very important. Here is an article from The Guardian by Alex Hearn, and uh, the writer mentioned that anonymized data can never be totally anonymous, especially now in the age of big data. There's a story in Australia. Their health department released anonymized data about the health of the population. No? So there's data about hospital visits and so on and so forth. And then other people, by looking at the data and correlating it with other publicly available data, they were able to identify, especially mga celebrities. Kasi there are some news about kailan nagkasakit yung gantong celebrity, saang hospital na confine si ganitong celebrity, and they were able to match the date with the data. So, yun, they were able to uncover some, they were able to associate the anonymized data to actual living persons. And we want to avoid that. No? So, we need to anonymize the human data as best as we can, especially if you're in the medical sciences field or in the social sciences field. And there are already a lot of tools available for that. And a lot of these tools are free, open source. Like, for example, there's the ARX data anonymization tool. And then again, if you're in the medical sciences, kasi sila talaga yung notorious dito, they need a lot of anonymization. You can look at the data services page of the Johns Hopkins libraries. No? So if you visit this page, you will see that it has a link to different tools. For example, tools for the identifying unstructured text. So usually these are transcripts or interviews. Sometimes you have to ano yun, transform yung voice, di ba? Yung kailangan ibahin yung boses. The identified data in digital images, maybe you have to blur some identifying features like tattoo or personal information na na-capture, or the identified tabular or otherwise structured data like those that are in CSV files. No? So a lot of these tools are open source, no? And this is hosted in their library, di ba? As librarians, we should be proactive in these services. So as you can see, they have a data services librarian within their library, so Johns Hopkins. And then after they identified the data, now is the time that you can choose your repository. Sometimes the repository is dictated by the discipline or the journal article you're submitting to, or the institution. If you have a university data repository, no, sometimes you have to follow that. But if not, there are also generic data repositories that are available out there. So let's look at some of them. An example is Figshare. So Figshare is a repository where users can make all of their research outputs available in a citable, shareable, and discoverable manner. So let's visit the website. You'll see what they mean by that. So the address is figshare.com. So from here, you can see that there are some institutions or academic research institutions that are actually using this as their repository. But at the same time, independent researchers can also use this, to upload their research data. And it follows the fair data principles. We can talk about that later. And then from here, you can see that you can actually look at the different fields where data is available. So if you are in the chemistry or biological sciences, but there's also studies in creative arts and writing, studies in human society. So all across the spectrum, no, from the hard sciences to the arts and humanities, merong data dito. So if you look at, for example, chemistry, and so you can further specify what field, or if you go to their search, advanced search, there are some facets that will allow you to control your research. So here it has 5 million results. You can filter it by license. So if you want those that have minimal restriction, so yung CC BY, that means attribution lang yung required. Yung CC BY NC, so that means no commercial use. So for academic purposes nyo lang siya pwede gamitin. NC, ND, no derivatives. In copyright, so in copyright, that means you need to secure the rights, no? So kailangan nyo magpaalam dun sa copyright holder, or you need to buy the copyrights. And then the item type, you can see here there are theses, journal contribution, data set. So there's over 1 million data set available. So if you click on that, then it will be filtered. Then you can further do some filtering to refine your search. So Figshare is one. Another one that I like is Zenodo. Kakilala niyo ba si Zenodotus? Have you heard of Zenodotus? So Zenodotus is the first librarian of the Library of Alexandria, the ancient library in Egypt that was burned to the ground. But at one point, it was recognized as the Library of the World, the Library of Alexandria. So Zenodotus is that person, and then Zenodo was named after Zenodotus. Zenodo is hosted by CERN, no, the European Research Center for Nuclear Research in Switzerland. So Zenodo is a very good platform where you can share not just research data, but also a variety of publications, even presentations. And what's good about these repositories is that if you deposit your work, it will provide you with a DOI. If you're familiar with that, that is yung mga nakikita nyong numbers, which is a link. It means a digital object identifier, and it is a unique link for your resource. And it is very important, especially for researchers who wants to build their portfolio. So for example, if they presented in a conference or walang publication, then they can just publish it here. They can also publish their data sets here. And the benefit of using Zenodo is citable. Ayan, every upload is assigned a digital object identifier to make them citable and trackable. And I think that's very attractive, no, for the researchers. Lagi ko 'yun lagi ko 'yun iniisip kasi we want to value their contribution, no? We want to incentivize them. Why should they share? Why should they share their work, 'di ba? So if it's citable, then that can build their portfolio. So here you can search. And what's good about Zenodo is, for example, if I type in tobacco, you will see here, there's also some facets. You can filter by file type, whether it's open or closed or embargoed. Embargoed meaning hindi pa siya allowed. It is to be released at a later date. There are also some keywords, some subjects. Then also, if it's a data set, if you're looking for data set or publication, or images or posters, presentations, or even software. So this is really becoming a general purpose repository, but at the same time, it's promoting the work of researchers. So as you can see here, meron siyang DOI, and then also there's a way to cite these uh, these works. Ito. So as you can see here, meron ditong cite versions. Ito pala. So usually it's the APA format. So you'll just have to copy this. And then also it can be integrated with Mendeley and many more. So meron din siyang mga BibTeX. So if you're using Zotero, which I also love. So yeah, you can do so much more. So that's Zenodo. Another platform is Data Dryad. So this is like a cooperative among universities. This is not free. See Data Dryad. If you're going to use it as an institution, there's a fee. But if you're just searching for data, or if as an individual researcher, you can upload your data here sa Data Dryad. So the website for this is datadryad.org. And then similar to Figshare, you can also search for, you can explore the data across different topics. You can also filter it by location in the map, or by subject, or by journal. So there are some journal that uses these repositories as their data repository. So for example, if you're a researcher, then meron kang article that you want to submit to, for example, PLOS ONE, they will require that you upload the supporting research data in this repository. So kadalasan, yung mga napapublish na articles in that your particular journal, they have a corresponding data set uploaded in these data repositories. Yeah, so you can search. And then aside from that, there's also institutional repositories. Like for example, there's the Harvard Dataverse, and Dataverse is a open source data repository, and they partner with different institutions. So you may notice that there is, for example, Oxford, I don't know if they have one, but yung mga big universities, they have a Dataverse, like Harvard Dataverse, MIT Dataverse. So you can visit that one. And then if you go to their website, ayun, you can see that they also upload data across different fields, across different subjects. And medyo, sorry, matagal mag-load. But you can see here in the screenshot, there is agricultural sciences, law, mathematical sciences, social sciences, napakarami. Ayun, so if you're looking for data, you can visit these different repositories. And I'm clicking on next. Wait, let me just stop share. Ayan. So the next part, pause muna tayo. No? So medyo kanina pa ako nagsasalita. Let's have some participation from everyone because we have an activity. No? So for example, I'm a researcher and I'm leading a multidisciplinary team studying the effects of tobacco consumption to the society. So given the example repositories, I want you to find some data sets that may be relevant for my team. And please provide the proper citation for that data set. No? So what you need to do for those of you who are in the Zoom meeting and for those who are watching via Facebook live stream, please go to this website. It's bit.ly/DOST-STII /RDM. So meron tayong Padlet dyan. So if you click on it, so I want you to visit those different repositories. No, you can go to figshare.com, or you can go to zenodo.org or datadryad.org or to the Harvard Dataverse, and then suggest some of the data sets that I can use for my team. So again, we are a multidisciplinary team. So there may be some people from the social sciences, but also from the medical sciences. And we're interested with how tobacco consumption affects society. So it's very general. It's very general. So I want you to look for data sets and then post it. So in order for you to post, you can just click on the plus, yung mga plus dyan, and then just post here. You can also put your name para ma-recognize ko kayo. And then you can post the citation. Just copy the citation and then post it here. So I'm giving you 10 minutes to do that. Yeah. So explore tayo. Hanap-hanap tayo ng mga data sets. And while you're doing that, I'm also looking at the chats. I'll be happy to answer those later. Meron tayong mga questions. Ayun, so we have one submitted that came from zenodo.org. So this is a study by Li Peng and Lu Lingling, a cultural reflection of China's tobacco technology from the International Journal of Case Studies. And there's a link. Ayun, so let's copy that link and let's visit that. So that is the beauty of these digital object identifiers. We can easily go back and trace those data sets. Ayun, so okay. And let's see. This is an article, okay? That is published under the Creative Commons. And there are there's just one file that is a PDF. Okay, yeah, so this will be useful. Let's see kung merong nag-submit ng data set. Oh, there's one from Dryad. So this one from Dataverse. Oh, it's a code book. Okay. So you've also noticed there's also a metric dun sa mga repositories. You can see how many times it was viewed and how many times it was downloaded. So again, you are free to upload your data sets here. And you can also create communities within Zenodo. That means you can curate for your own organization within Zenodo. No? So for the meantime, I know na one of the biggest challenge here in the Philippines is budget. No? So maybe your institution doesn't have a budget yet for data repository or institutional repository. then just create a community in Zenodo and then train your researchers, your academics on how to upload their work in Zenodo. So you can see some big institutions are actually using Zenodo as their repository, and even conferences. Mabenta rin to sa mga conferences. So you will see ito, Lucerne University of Applied Sciences and Arts. So if you view that particular community, nandun in a collection yung mga different materials. No? Because I understand that some of you may be one-man librarian na tinatawag, no? So within the team, mag-isa lang po kayo. So it's really challenging if you're going to build one. Ayun, wow, thank you. Thank you. So right now, yun, ang daming nag-submit ng kanilang mga examples. So I hope you get to experience and try how these repositories work. It's fairly straightforward, and a lot of them have very good user interface. They have capabilities to that allows us to filter the search results. Wow, ayun. Very good. Very good. Maraming salamat. Okay, now let's go back to the presentation. Thank you very much for participating in that short activity. I appreciate it. This is another repository that actually is a directory of repository. You've noticed that there are actually so many data repositories out there. And if we're just depending on a few repositories, then we may not be providing the best, not the best data set or the best information to our clients. And the registry of research data repositories is a directory. No? It's a registry directory of all of the research data repositories that are recognized or have submitted in this registry. And this is actually a good resource if you are looking for a specific subject or discipline-oriented data repository. Because if you've noticed, yung mga examples natin kanina, si Figshare, si Zenodo, si Data Dryad, and also the Harvard Dataverse, these are general purpose, or in a way, they are for different subject matter. But sometimes, in a highly specialized research, they want to look at their own discipline. And usually, researchers upload their data within their own discipline because that's where the higher chances of it being useful to others, diba? Because if you're, for example, if you're from the economics field, or if you're have data about in the social sciences field, it may not be that useful for example, yung mga nasa particle physics, for example. Diba? So the Registry of Research Data Repositories address that concern. So for example, let's look at browse by subject. So in here, you'll see that there are four areas. We have life sciences, natural sciences, engineering sciences, and humanities and social sciences. So if you're looking for, let's say, in the natural sciences, if you click on it, you can further narrow down the subject and the field. For example, if you're in the chemical, solid state, and surface research, and if you click on that one, then it will show you the data sets. Or sorry, these are not data sets, but rather these are data repositories. No? So data repositories pa lang to. So mas marami pa kayong data. So you, for example, IOChem-BD is from Spain, and it has scientific and statistical data formats, structured text, images, and plain text. This one is from the UK, the Imperial College High Performance Computing Service Data Repository, yung mga HPC, so yung mga big universities, well-funded universities, they have that. And then from the United States, there's the Magnetics Information Consortium. So these are all the repositories. So if you click on it, then you will be redirected to its page, and then you will see where's the repository URL. There's also some information about the institution, the team, the terms rather, and also the standards that are met by this particular repository. You will also notice that there are some logos here. These will help us identify the standard of the repository, because as mentioned by Director Burgos earlier, we are swimming with data, and some of them are, or information, and some of them are misinformation. So some of these data repositories have been vetted already. So for example, you will see here, this research data repository is neither certified nor supports a repository standard. So what you can do is you can filter. So for example, if I reset my filter here, I can filter the certificate, and then the most popular or the most common certification is the Core Trust Seal. So if I click on that one, there's a total of 110 data repositories that are certified by the Core Trust Seal. So that is like an institution that says this data repository is trustworthy. Okay? So ibig sabihin, it follows some standards on data sharing principles and so on. So yeah, these are some of the use trustworthy data repositories. You can also search by country, no? And I know some of you may be curious, meron ba sa Philippines? Currently, there's one. I believe this is from a previous project by the Marine Science Institute. There's the fish base, where the Philippines is part of that country. So this is a joint project by the several countries about, it's a database of fish, the fishbase.org. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there is the Core Trust Seal. You can use this to determine which repositories are trustworthy. So this is again an organization, an independent organization that looks at the qualities of the data repository. Is it secure? Does it provide citation? And does it have PIDs or persistent identifiers? So things like that, no? Ayun, so we've completed the research phases, the data lifecycle activities. And after the preservation, if there's another research activity, then we can now start with the reuse of data. So imagine there's another circle here that starts with the reuse. Because in our example, we created the data, but we want to foster open science, we want to foster collaborative work. So if we properly preserve, describe our data, then that will give way to the reuse of the data, no? Of the research data. So wala rin tayong ma-share sa ating mga clients if the researchers are not going to preserve properly their data. No? So it's really up to the community. This is a community effort. How about in the Philippines? So I understand that when I'm talking to students, a lot of their complaints was there's no data. And unfortunately, to some extent, that is true. But currently, there are some positive developments. Like, for example, the the Philippine Statistics Authority, they have a very good platform which is known as the OpenStat that you can visit to look for uh, census data or data about the Philippines. You can look at the openstat.psa.gov.ph. And then there's also the FOI portal, although I know that freedom of information is really has a different purpose. Right now, it's also being used as a platform for requesting data. And the reason why that is possible is users can search for the requests of others. Like, for example, if someone already requested for data about labor, for example, or unemployment data, then other people can search for the same request and download that data. However, it doesn't really follow the open data principle where the data is uploaded proactively. So it has to be requested first. And then there's also some university repositories out there that may have data repositories. Currently in UP, unfortunately, there's none. But we have digital archives, an institutional repository where the theses of the students are uploaded. I've also seen the Archium in Ateneo, but it's also an institutional repository. And last time I checked, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, is that a lot of the uploaded works in there are research articles or theses, but not really research data. So Slido time. What other data repositories do you know, especially uh, local ones here in the Philippines that are readily accessible to other users where data sets are available and the authors are citable. So that means there is a unique identifier. Some data repositories that are similar to what I've shown earlier, I would be happy to see other examples that are here in the Philippines. No? That is focus on data about the Philippines. Ayun, the Filipinas Heritage Library, the Herden Plus for Health Science. Um, yeah. So these usually these libraries they provide access to resources, to journal articles, which is very helpful. Yeah, I also know about the data.gov.ph. Unfortunately, I don't know if that is still being continued. So if you visit the data.gov.ph, you will notice that uh, it no longer is available. But please correct me if I'm wrong. Kasi last time I checked, which is just early today, the system is no longer available. Safe deck. Mm-hmm. Google Drive. Uh, yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't provide the mechanisms for browsing data and also providing ways for our users to discover research data efficiently. DSpace is a platform. I know that they have an open source data repository. So if you're looking for platforms, there's one from DSpace. I can also talk about that later. Ayun. So a lot of you are Animo repository. I have yet to check that. No? So thank you for that example. I'll be checking that later. So I'll be sharing the responses. Hopefully this can serve as a resource for the participants, no? And hopefully this will start our conversation on really establishing a data repository for us. Yeah, Mendeley data is another one, but it's a general purpose. Data.world, yeah, that's another one. Data.world. So as you can see, there are already a lot of data platforms. So that means uh, we can actually use that, no, in your institution, especially if you don't have the budget yet to develop your own institutional repository. And there are some that even doesn't want to develop their own institutional repository because that is really expensive. You have to have a team that will maintain because again, research data management is active management. So the if we can utilize the free generic data repositories like Zenodo earlier, then that can be a start, or data.world. No? Thank you so much for your participations. And now I want to discuss how can librarians and information professionals support our users through research data management. Number one example would be data management plans. There is a tool known as the DMP tool that is freely available through the website dmptool.org. So let's visit that one. Data management plans are increasingly being required by funding agencies, especially if it's a foreign funding agency. Like, for example, in the United States, the National Science Foundation, the National Institutes of Health, they will require that the proponents or the researchers, when they are applying for a research grant, that they should also provide a DMP or a data management plan. So a data management plan is a document that states that covers the whole research data lifecycle activities. And you can actually look at some of the plans. Some plans are publicly available. And then you can sign in and create an account here for free. And then you will just have to answer a form that describes your strategy for your research data. So you can see here that there's a template. The most popular template is the one provided by the Digital Curation Center. And then let's look at an English one. So a lot of these are in a different language, so it may be hard for us to look at that. Some universities, so as you can see, uh, a lot of these are coming from Brazil. Probably it's a deadline for their research proposal. Tapos, that's why magkakasunod siya. This one, let's try and look at this one. So these are the contents. There's a title, the creator, and you will be given a digital object identifier for this plan. The affiliation and the ORCID ID. This is a unique identifier for researchers. I'll discuss that also later. The project abstract, and then eto na. This is the plan for the data lifecycle. So, for example, data collection. What data will you collect or create? So, this is the response of the researcher. And then, how will the data be collected or created? Documentation and metadata. What documentation and metadata will accompany the data? Will you provide README files? Ito, annotation files will be provided, corresponding raw files. Yeah, it will depend on the field that you're working in. There's also ethics and legal compliance. So how will you manage any ethical issues? How will you manage copyright and intellectual property rights issues? There's also concern about storage and backup. How will the data be stored and backed up during the research? How will you manage access and security? Usually, you will specify who are allowed, what permissions are allowed to certain group of users. There's also selection and preservation. So which data are of long-term value should be retained, shared, and or preserved? What is the long-term preservation plan for the data set? So usually you'll include here what repository will you be using? How will you share the data? And then responsibilities and resources. Yan. So the data management plan actually covers the activities that we discussed earlier. So as a librarian, if you can provide training or if you can assist our researchers on accomplishing their data management plans, we can suggest, for example, during the storage part or during the metadata and documentation part, what they will do, then that's a very good service. No? And we can also create one-stop shop for researchers. You've noticed the examples earlier, the big universities abroad, they have a data services page for their researchers. So for example, you need to ask, does your researchers in your institution, do they already have their ORCID? Do they have a Google Scholar page? Do they have an academia profile? So you can uh, create a page where you will assist them on how to create those because that will help build their research portfolio. And then also, as I mentioned, yung RDM service page, some you can link to some of the best practices. Like for example, what's the template for getting consent? No, what's the template for writing a README file? What's the template for doing this and that? So there's a lot of things that we can do. And then also, we can form networks. So I'm very happy that there's so many participants here. You can sign up in the Research Data Alliance. This is for free. You can see the website here. It is rd-alliance.org. I'm already a member of that one. So as a member, you will have access to their resources and to their webinars. A lot of them are free. Then you can also participate in some of their meetings. I think if you are at a particular level, if you're an institutional member or if you're paying for something, but a lot of their resources are free. So you can sign up for that. And then there's also a special interest group that was started by one of my colleagues in UPSLIS. Shout out to Professor Dan Anthony Dorado. So he started the Data Librarians Special Interest Group. So this is a Slack channel. If you haven't heard of Slack, it's like a chat room, no, but it's more than that. We can share a lot of resources over Slack. So please join sa Slack. We had a meeting and we're planning to do data carpentry workshops, like for example, teaching librarians and information professionals how to use R, data analysis with R, and also Python. So if you're interested, please join us. Currently, 45 pa lang kami na nandun. These are librarians from different institutions and also academics in the LAS field. So please join by typing in bit.ly/ph-DLSIG. That's Data Librarian Special Interest Group. So it's very an informal group, but we are trying to meet at least once a month to discuss some data issues. Like, for example, do you have data problems, or do you want to perform a certain analysis? Or sometimes we also share what opportunities are available. Like, for example, workshops and other seminars. So please join our group. And then, of course, you can also look at other resources. Some of the leading resources would be the Digital Curation Center through this website. There's also the Research Data Management Librarian Academy, which is a MOOC, a massive open online course. So you can take this for free. And then if you want certification from Simmons University in Boston, you need to pay $75 so that you'll get a recognized certificate in data management. So maybe we can ask our supervisors to sponsor that, because that is also for your personal growth. Then there's also this Coursera course developed by University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and University of Edinburgh, the Research Data Management and Sharing. And then there's also the Mantra Research Data Management Sharing course developed in the UK. So there's so many resources. But for me, I believe that's the most important is really to form networks. No, we need to form networks and help each other. So to conclude, what I want to point out is that as librarians and information professionals, we do not just provide access to information, but we also support knowledge production. We are partners in knowledge production, and there's a lot of activities and support that we can provide at each step of the data life cycle Okay, so now it's your turn. What do you think is the biggest challenge in establishing a research data management service in your organization? No, provided that I was able to sway you that this is really important for your institution and you want to start a research data management service. Okay, yeah, staff commitment. I can imagine that there will really be a lot of upskilling and training. One man librarian, yes, yeah, I've heard of that. Manpower or a lack of staff. So this will really require leadership. No, so some of those things we cannot address by our own. So it has to come from let's say the vice chancellor for research or the vice chancellor for academic affairs, because they can provide leadership and support. This doesn't have to be an endeavor by the library alone. No, you can partner with your IT department, you know, experts, specialists, budget. Budget in some way, we can still address that because there are a lot of free resources. However, we will still be needing budget for training and upskilling the staff. So I think the most important resource really is the people, no, for in order for you to start your RDM services. So kung funds, medyo kaya pa natin yan gawa ng paraan. But if we're lacking staff, that's really challenging. A server, yeah. Again, if that will be an issue, you can start small. You can use yung mga free data repository like Zenodo, because you can create communities there so that you can start practicing research data management. Oh, I like that. Support from administration. If you need uh if you need to provide a business case, I'd be happy to help you with that, because we need to convince them that research data management is a crucial component, especially if you're a research university. You should be able to provide research data management services. Yep. Yep. So it's good that you are beginning to think, no, if you're going to implement an RDM service within your institution, these are the challenges. Oh, I like this one. As the saying goes, a great effort comes great responsibility, especially if you're a one-woman man like Brian. You need to be persistent in convincing your admin. I agree. IT skills bridging RDM into archives innovation to support online learning. Okay. Thank you. What's good about this is you're starting to think what may be the challenges in your organization, because that's the first step. And then we can plan what could be the next. Baka do we need more convincing from the higher ups, no? Or maybe we can start right away with upskilling our staff. So again, a lot of the resources are available out there. I cannot emphasize enough that networking is very important. So please join the Data Librarians Special Interest Group. Uh, Unstable internet connection, that is, infrastructure is really an issue. So if your infrastructure is still an issue, then I can understand that RDM may not be the priority. So because syempre, if you have unstable internet connection, we need to address that first. Wow. Okay. Thank you so much for all of your responses. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing. And that ends my presentation. If you want to collaborate with me, this is my email address. You can also visit my website, and you can also follow me on Twitter at PV Perez1. I'm so happy. Thank you for inviting me here to the staff of the DOST-STII library. And here are the references for this presentation.
Okay, that was a very interactive. Okay, sorry. That was a very interactive and informative presentation, Sir Paul. In my opinion, and I know that the participants will also agree that today we have learned a lot of practical knowledge that we can apply both in our personal and in our professional field. As for our fellow librarians and information professionals, we are reminded of our responsibility in making sure that information and contents created are used and preserved. With the shift of offline services to online, our libraries need to pivot and adapt to this change. In doing so, we need to make sure that we are able to provide information and information sources or materials that are reliable and factual without violating any copyright law or intellectual property rights. At the same time, we protect the privacy of our clients who are availing of our services. So let us strive to work together in fulfilling our philosophy, that is, to provide the right information at the right user on the right time. And for our researchers, students, and other professionals, you may get in touch with your librarians if you are interested in publishing your research outputs. Now, before we proceed to our Q&A portion, let me remind everyone that the webinar evaluation link will be posted just before the webinar ends. Only those who successfully finish the webinar and answer our evaluation link will be provided with an e-certificate. We shall now proceed to the Q&A portion. Ready na po kayo, Sir Paul? Okay, so first question. Okay, from an anonymous attendee. Question is, Sir Paul, what type of data that is personal to the participants of a research is not allowed to collect?
Oh, okay. Um, Number one is when we are collecting data from the participants, based sa ating Data Protection Act, there should be a purpose why we're collecting that data. I know that a lot of, for example, a lot of surveys, sometimes they ask for our gender, they also ask for the birth date, and also for uh, sometimes civil status, whether you're single, married, widowed. But if you look at the study, those kind of data are not actually being used. No, it's
Mhm.
not being analyzed. So it will really depend on your research. And sometimes in ethics board committee, you need to justify why you're collecting that particular data. So
Mhm.
I hope that to the students who are listening right now, if you're going to design your survey, if you're going to collect your data, please be mindful, especially if it's personal data, because if it's personal data, and also if it's a sensitive personal data. So when we say sensitive, those are data that may be used against our data subjects. Like for example, political affiliation, religious affiliation, religious belief, sexual orientation. So those are sensitive personal data. So if you're going to collect those, make sure that it's really crucial for your analysis and it's central to your research, because otherwise you will be liable to protecting those data. So you need to make sure that you will not that you will dispose it properly, that you will not be sharing it to uh, unauthorized people. So yeah, it will take a lot of management. So what data is not allowed, it will depend on the goal of your research.
Mhm. Okay, thank you, sir. Next question. How can libraries be effectively Okay, let me rephrase this one. How can libraries effectively share data and information in data management techniques with applying ethical standards, also abiding the policies of an institution? Why is it important to do data management techniques to provide knowledge and information, especially in research organizations and institutions?
Ayun. I like the question because uh I it kinds of wants me to reiterate what's the point, of research data management. And w- if we look at ourselves as librarians, that we only provide access to information, then uh, it limits our purpose. For example, you have researchers, and by the time that they come to us to look for information, usually they've exhausted all the resources, 'di ba? Because they are the expert in their field. They will try all the necessary ways to look for information, and if they can find anything, then this is the time that they can go to librarians. And by that time, what else can we offer, di ba, if the researcher has already looked for those information? So what I argue is that we don't just provide access to information, but rather we are partners in knowledge production, and that gives more value to us because we can provide support in every step of the way. Diba? We want our researchers to focus on their subject matter, and then all the administrative stuff, all the meta information, like for example, uh, as I've already discussed earlier, arranging the files using the appropriate metadata, planning how to share the research data, we can lead with that, because that is part of knowledge production. And we can, so that we can inform our research, you can just focus on your subject matter, because that's, you're an expert on that. But in terms of managing your research data, we can help you with that. So yeah, that's what libraries and what I hope librarians and information professionals will do.
Thank you, Sir Paul. Okay, next question from Sylvian Bacos. Good afternoon po. If ever we have searched something from the field of the samples given of free data repositories related to subjects the school offered, can we copy the link and be posted as our OER links? Thanks. Mm.
Yes, absolutely. So, as I mentioned, those repositories, they provide a citation, how to cite them, and you just have to be careful. For example, in the data dryad, all of the data uploaded in data dryad are under the license of public domain or CC0. No, so that means attribution may not be is not required. No, so you have to check what type of license is being used in that data repository. There are some data repositories that have a blanket license, so you will see that at the bottom of the page that all data sets are licensed under Creative Commons by attribution. So that means you need to recognize, you need to give attribution. So that means you need to cite your sources. So you just have to copy the citation and put it in your research. But you have to be careful also. Make sure that before you download, check the whole page, see if there are some other restrictions on the use of the data. No, because not all repositories are under the Creative Commons. Some may be copyrighted material. So even if it's copyrighted, some may have limited rights. Like for example, they will allow you to use the data as long as you use it for educational purposes. Ayun. And I like the fact that you're asking that question because those questions are the ones that can be addressed, by librarians. So the librarian should have a page about. I know that they already have this, especially university librarians. So they have trainings on how to properly cite materials and where to look for Creative Commons materials or copyrighted materials.
Thank you, Sir Paul. And once again, for our participants, the evaluation link will be posted just before the webinar will end. So if, for example, you need to leave the Zoom room and you're going to join us via FB Live, the evaluation link will also be posted there. Okay, next question from an anonymous attendee. May organization po ba sa Philippines where we can upskill to become data librarians so that we can have the necessary skills to practice RDM?
You know what? We would love to. We would love to have one. So right now, as I mentioned earlier, we only have an informal group. We call it the Data Librarians Special Interest Group. Again, the link was posted earlier, but I'll also post it in the chat later. You can join us. So this was started by one of our colleagues, faculty member of also of UP SLIS, Professor Dan Anthony Dorado, along with other faculty members who are passionate about data and open data. So that includes me, and also there's Professor Jani Sormieda and also Professor Kathleen Lourdes Obille. So we started this informal group, and then we are planning to have sessions, workshops wherein we teach each other, because some of the members of the data librarians are already practicing. No, I know there are members from uh, the DOH library. There's also one from DepEd. So yeah, please join us. Please join us. There's no formal organization yet that I know of, because we looked for professional organizations and then wala pa. So maybe we can start.
Ayan, so we will look forward to that, sir. Hopefully, you will be able to start. Okay, next po. Uh, Another from an anonymous attendee. Sir Paul, when I took my Bliss unit circa 2010, these topics weren't as hot as it is nowadays. Under which undergraduate or graduate course and or elective would you categorize the topic of your talk today? If this is something that we ought to consider as a standard inclusion for the LIS curriculum.
Wow, that is a very good question. No, uh, because it also asks about the curriculum of LIS, which we always think of, because we also want to provide the theoretical foundations, but at the same time, we want to also address what's in practice, no, what our current librarians are experiencing. In UP SLIS, currently, we are offering research data management as an elective, as a special topic course. So it's not part of the required curriculum. But if you're going to ask me, we can actually put some RDM concepts. If, for example, if you don't have an RDM subject as a whole, you can incorporate some of its concept in information services, diba? Because uh, we always provide information sources, but data, collective data, is also information, diba? So we can insert portion of research data management under information sources and references portion. But I know baka kulang na din, because that's also an important topic. It's a librarian's licensure exam subject. So, but if you want to go the extra mile, you can include research data management topics.
Okay, thank you, Sir Paul. Next, pag samahin ko na lang tong dalawa. Is there any significant difference between repository, database, dataset, and information system?
Oh, I also like that question. So, these terms, usually uh, there has to be a consensus within the community on how it's being used, and there are also literature that defines what these terms are. So, when we say database, the in technical terms, these are tables, an organized set of data. So, for example, you can have a database as part of your data repository. So someone may have submitted, let's say, a database of patient health records, for example, in a data repository, diba? So you can imagine the data repository. For the example, the examples earlier, you can imagine it having data sets, like for example, Excel files or CSV files, and it can also have a database file, diba? Because essentially database are also files, but it's an arrangement of organized data in tables, rows, and columns. Information system, on the other hand, has a different purpose. So an information system is composed of different components. So it will have a software component, it will also have a hardware component, and most importantly, a people component. And usually information systems, we're most familiar with management information systems, diba? So for example, in your organization, you may have a human resource information management system, or in the library, we have the library management information system. So it's really goal oriented for the operations of the organization. So it's kind of different pa from the data repositories. But I do understand that it may be confusing, yung data repository, database, or kasi 'di ba sa library we call database subscriptions, 'di ba? But it's a database of of journals, and then each journal meron pa siyang article. So I understand the confusion, but the technical in terms of technicalities, uh, we in research data management we use the term data repositories.
Okay, so I hope we are enlightened with Sir Paul's explanation. Next, from 3C Sacramento, this is from Simon Philip. If my research or the research of my client was published in a non-open access journal, can we still freely distribute it via uploading in a repository through the Creative Commons license?
Oh, there's definitely going to be some restrictions regarding that. And I know for a fact that this is still an ongoing debate because uh, it's very expensive. Subscriptions to journals are very expensive, and I what I'm seeing, for example, some academics, what they do is that they upload their own research in their own website, no, or sometimes in their academia profile, but it will depend in the publisher of the journal. Some of them may prevent the author to upload their own copy because they have given the right. They have given the publishing right to the journal. So we need to review what rights are available to us as a library. That's why we highly encourage researchers, academics to publish in open access journals. Yun talaga.
Okay, so much better po. Idagdag na lang or i-publish na lang natin under the Creative Commons. Okay, thank you, sir. Next, we have here from Miss Rina Ramos. On research data with copyright issues, how do you deal with it?
Ayun, there are some examples earlier dun sa mga ibang data repositories. There are data sets that are in copyright. So as long, we need to review ano ba yung nakasado sa copyright na yun because sometimes it it just means that you cannot use it for commercial purposes. No? So, and whenever there's a copyright, we need to obtain permission before we can use it. So, yun. That's why, uh, if you look at the core trust seal, some of the standards in looking at trustworthy uh, repository is also looking at what type of licenses are available. And there's sorry I wasn't able to discuss fair principles. So there's a movement especially in Europe called fair data, and these are principles that embodies open knowledge and open access. So yun, it's really encouraged that data be published in Creative Commons or in open licenses. But in the event that it's in copyright, then we have to respect that. We need to obtain the copyright's permission if we are allowed to use it. But most commonly, if it's in a data repository, then you should be. It has a restriction on only using it for educational purposes. So I think that will give us more. It at least gives us some permission to use it, diba? Because we're in the academic setting.
Okay, sir, in addition, I would just like to ask, kasi we encountered this also. The thesis has a restriction like the author does not want this to be accessed by the public, but they have donated it to us in our library. And there is a note there that says uh, before the thesis will be accessed, the user needs to sign a confidentiality agreement. So my question would be, uh, who would be the signatories of that confidentiality agreement? Is it the author and the user or our library and the user?
Yeah, that's a good question. For the example, for the case of our university, we have that same page for all of the theses that are being produced by the university, and there is classification whether the thesis will be publicly available or will it be limitedly available or not at all. And the signatory is the author, the researcher, and then the library will have to follow. The institution will have to follow what's indicated in that page. So this has to be a policy by the institution. But before, but also, I would like to reiterate that institutions, especially public institutions, they should endeavor to produce knowledge that are publicly accessible. Diba? For example, the University of the Philippines is publicly funded, and so the knowledge that's being produced should be available to the public. Of course, protecting personal information because there may be some thesis about a specific organization. So maybe they need to redact some information. But ultimately, the goal should be to provide public knowledge. But in order to address that concern, it has to be a policy of your institution. No? And in UP, we have a very clear policy on that one that was created by the vice chancellor for research and development. So all of the theses that are being published, there's a page, a rights page that needs to be decided by the author along with the advisor.
Mhm. Okay, sir. Maybe we will need to track the author because we also did not find any contact details of the author of the thesis. So that is also one of our concerns for the thesis and materials being written by our DOST scholars. So magaganda po yung mga
Mm.
thesis and dissertations po nila. However, some thesis and dissertations have restrictions on that. Ayan. So anyway, thank you, sir, for answering. Next po. Mhm. From an anonymous attendee, in terms of policy making and marrying existing policies such as institutional, funder, IPR, licensing, etc., what would be a good approach in doing so? What would be the vital parts in creating a policy?
Oh, okay. Um, Usually, the approach would be to look at other similar institutions, what policies they have. But it's important that you have guiding principles as an organization. So, for example, as I again in UP, because it's a national university and one of its mandate is to provide to serve public service. So that should be incorporated in the policy development. But for practical purposes, you can also look at the policy of other institutions similar to your institution. For example, if you're a private university, so maybe you can look at their usually yung sa mga United States available sa public yung mga policy nila. So you can compare if that's applicable to your organization. But definitely you should involve the stakeholders in crafting your policy. So the librarian should be involved with that, no? Because we provide the institutional support and training for research data management. So it should be a conversation between the librarians, the vice chancellor for research. I know that a lot of research university has that kind of office. Then also representative from the faculty and students. A lot of the research data management policies and innovation really came from the STEM field, especially sa medical sciences, because they are the ones who really manage a lot of data. So a lot of the origins of RDM really came from them, sa natural sciences and some medical sciences. So it's also important to involve them, but we should not uh, neglect other fields as well. For example, arts and humanities and social sciences are also beginning to be data incentive with the rise of digital humanities and uh, digital society research, di ba? Digital studies. So we should consider all stakeholders in crafting our policies.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next question. Uh, do we need to hire an information technology expert to maintain the records management database considering the lack of budget and manpower?
It will it Yeah, my answer is always it will depend on your organization. So, but that is still a good question. You need to evaluate what are the talents available within your organization. So, do you need to hire or do you need to upskill a staff member? And how will be the hiring process? You also mentioned that you are lacking budget. So, that's a lot of problems that only you and your institution can resolve. So my advice is that if you can uh, start with upskilling and forming networks, then uh, you can, maybe there's a member of your staff who is willing to be trained. So I really support internal growth of the staff. So if there's a member of your staff who is interested, then support them, diba? Ask them to attend webinars and then join or take the online courses. So a lot of them are free, and then you can start small. Then once you see that your research data management service is working, that there's a lot of demand for it, then you can use it as an argument to ask for more support and budget, diba? I understand that it's really a constant challenge for librarians to contend with budget and projects, but from what I'm reading and from what I'm seeing, a really good start is to show that with our limited capacity, with our limited resources, we can do these things. What more, diba? What more if they provide support and budget? So that can be a strategy that you can take.
Thank you, sir. Ayan, totoo naman po. I think that's one of the basic na and similar concerns of all libraries, or not even libraries alone. Budget talaga. Next question, sir, from Annalisa Frain. For institutional repository of research paper like thesis and dissertation, would you recommend Figshare or Zenodo?
I would recommend Zenodo. Very biased like ako sa Zenodo because what's good about Zenodo is you can curate it into communities, and also uh, the fact that published articles are provided proper citation and digital object identifier. It can also be linked to the profile of your researchers. For example, I have an ORCID profile and a Google Scholar profile. So because I'm just the beginning and I want to be in the academia in the future, I have an incentive, to build on my research portfolio, and Zenodo is a good platform for that. There are some even uh, professors or academics that upload their lectures or their talks in Zenodo because that is their part of their knowledge production. So and I can see that Zenodo really values that. So I recommend that one.
Mhm. Thank you, sir. Next question from Anonymous. What can we do to put up a data repository since I'm just an assigned teacher but not a graduate of library science major? Where should I start?
This is a good start, no? Attending webinars and being informed. Next is, as I mentioned earlier, network. Because I understand your situation. This was given to you, and from your question, I can understand that you are have very limited manpower and resources. So network. By networking, you are distributing there's a chance for you to distribute the workload. So, for example, you can learn from someone and then also invite that person to talk to your institution, diba? And that's how these things happen. Like for example, si Ma'am Maglake, because of her network, na-introduce siya ako. So I now speaking here. So that's my advice. And then also ask the reason why you need to start a data management program in your institution. Look at the needs of your clients, ano ba yung immediate needs nila, and then you can start from there.
Okay, thank you, sir. And sir, I understand the repositories you have presented are free when we join, but within the repository, there might be articles or publications that needs to be paid, right? So, hindi po lahat within that repository is free.
Um, yeah, that's true. That means meron kasing mga repository like Data Dryad, Figshare, they provide institutional account. And if you're an institution, there are some features that will be accessible to you that's not available dun sa free. Like for example, you may want to have analytics, know how many citations or data downloads are your resources are receiving. So those special features are available dun sa mga paid. But for free, you just upload your data sets, your materials.
Mhm. Okay, thank you, sir. And sir, from a researcher's point of view, since yung mga repositories, we are free to upload our researches, who does the vetting or sino pong nag-check ng kanyang reliability? Kasi may mga ibang repositories that does not offer a review.
Yeah.
Ayun po.
Uh,
So, sino pong nagvi-vet or paano sila dumadaan sa vetting?
yeah, that's a good question. So there's no vetting. No. What how can we ensure the quality of those that are uploaded? It will be through communities of librarians. So as you mentioned, as you've seen, for example, this is Zenodo, there are curated communities, and that's how you can. That's a criteria that you can look at whether these publications are in a way vetted. Usually, conference proceedings. There are some conferences that doesn't produce uh, journal articles, right, or journal proceedings. It's just a conference where people present, but those who presented, they were vetted through peer review of their abstract, diba? Some of the conference chair selected, let's say 20 out of the 100 submitted abstracts. So there's vetting of information there, but it's just so happened that these conferences really doesn't produce proceedings. That's why you can see a lot of them in Zenodo. So you need to look at who the curator is, and then usually if it's just uploaded by someone, then you need to look at the credentials of that person. So because as I mentioned earlier, academics, they sometimes upload their presentation in Zenodo to share it and to give a chance for them to be recognized and credited for that output. No, but usually academics will publish in peer-reviewed journals naman. If and usually that's a requirement for a university. But what you will see usually in these data repositories are communities, and you need to look whether that particular community is trustworthy.
Okay, thank you, sir. And we have the final question. Is in-house repository safe in today's situation?
That's also a question that I'm also asking whenever I attend meetings abroad. And the trend that's becoming now is no, because there's so many features that you need to incorporate in these data repositories and integrations. Like, for example, you need to integrate personal persistent identifiers like DOI, ORCID, and also you also need to integrate reference software like Mendeley, Zotero, and all that stuff. And unless you're a well-funded university that has a team of developers, then you can maintain the data repository. But the trend now is having these international repositories or discipline-based repositories. Discipline-based meaning if you're in the field of biomedical sciences, then you will upload your resources there and you will see that multiple universities and research institutions are uploading their materials there because that's a higher chance for your data set to be utilized by other researchers. And also uh, it's a consortium. It's a consortia where a lot of institutions are participating in the maintenance of that repository. Data repositories are very hard to maintain. Yan.
Okay, thank you, sir. And that's the final question. Thank you very much, everyone, for your active participation. And now it's game time. Okay, so it's game time. Answer the question for a chance to win Starbucks freebies. This is the mechanics. Okay. Call the number that we will flash on the screen and answer the question that will be given by our speaker. Okay, paki-ready na po ang inyong phone. And Sir Paul, ready na po kayo sa inyong tanong? Yes. Okay, so is everyone ready? Ready na ba kayo sa ating tanong? Nako, empty bat na ako. Okay, ready! Okay. So, after Sir Paul says his question, and then magfa-flash na po kami ng, or ifa-flash na po namin sa screen yung number and that's the time you're going to dial. Okay? Ayan, paunahan po ng pag-dial. And Sir Paul, your question.
The first question is, what is the name of the registry that we can consult for different research data sets? So what is the name of the registry that we can consult for different research data sets?
Here's the number. Okay. Kung sinong unang makatawag at makasagot ng tama, mapapasa kanya itong, ay hindi makita, mystery bag. And, okay,
Yan na, may caller na.
may caller na. Wait. Hello, good afternoon. Ma'am, wait lang po. Ano pong pangalan nila? Ma'am? Mike? Saang institution po sila? Wait. Saan po ulit? Asian Development Bank. Okay, Sir Mike from ADB. Ano po yung sagot ninyo? Again? Hindi ko masyadong marinig. Okay, pakiulit po. Research repository daw. Tama po ba, Sir Paul?
Nako, sorry. Hindi po yun yung exact name.
Okay, hindi daw po yun yung exact name. Okay, sorry ma'am. Next caller po. Okay, ayan na. Okay, next. Hello po. Hello? Oh. Hello, good afternoon. Ano pong pangalan nila? Rizalina. From what institution po? St. Louis School Incorporated. Ano po ang sagot nila? red3data.org, sir.
That is correct.
And that is correct. Okay, so mapapasayo itong isang Starbucks bag. Okay, next question, Sir Paul. Thank
Itong
you.
next
We will get
question,
in touch with you.
congratulations sa kanya. Next question, madali lang to, so pabilisan kayo. Please give one example of a generic data repository. Give one example of a generic data repository.
Here's the number. Hindi po. Ibang number naman po. Okay, here's the number. Para maiba. Ito naman po yung tatawagan ninyo. Okay, iba po ang tinatawagan ninyo. Okay, here's a caller. Hello, good afternoon. Sino po sila? Norhata. Hi, Miss Norhata. Saang institution po? From Cotabato
Wow.
City. Okay, what is your answer, ma'am? Zenodo, sir.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that's correct. Congratulations, ma'am. Okay, thank you so much. Ayan. Congratulations to all our winners. You all won Starbucks souvenir items. We will contact you on how you can claim your prizes. Thank you, Sir Paul, for your questions. Ayan, wala daw silang pang-call. Okay. Sana all may pang-call. Okay. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone. Ayan. Moving on, may I once again call on Miss Linderlit M. Maglake to read the citation and award the certificate of appreciation to our speaker.
So, narinig po ba? Am I loud and clear? Okay po ba ang audio? Okay. Ayan. So, again, congratulations sa lahat ng mga nanalo. So, kukontakin na lang namin kayo para papadeliver namin yung inyong Starbucks freebies. And then again, thank you, Professor Paul Jason Perez, Sir PJ. So for an enlightening and insightful presentation on research data management and also for introducing the RDM frameworks and for sharing the best practices and tools used in RDM. So we truly agree that as librarian and information professionals, we do not just provide access to information, but we also support knowledge production. And we are with you, sir, in this advocacy. So in with that, on behalf of the Department of Science and Technology Information Institute, we would like to present the Certificate of Appreciation to Mr. Paul Jason B. Perez for sharing his knowledge and insights as a resource speaker for the DOST-STII Library Webinar Series entitled Providing Access to Library Content in a Changing Environment, held on 22 September 2021, broadcast via Zoom and Facebook Live. Given this 22nd day of September 2021, signed by our Director Richard P. Burgos. Again, thank you very much, Sir Paul. And we hope we can invite you again on our future webinar. Sana maulit to, sir. Thank you. And
Salamat din po.
thank you, sir. We would also like to present the certificate of appreciation to our sign language interpreter. So we have Miss Maria Rodora B. Daep and Rosalie Makaspak. So for sharing their expertise as our sign language interpreter. So again, thank you very much, Miss Rhoda and Miss Rosalie. And lastly, we would like to recognize all of you who joined us today in this webinar. So for participating in the DOST-STII Library Webinar Series. So we would like to thank you all for taking time out from your schedule to join us this afternoon. We really appreciate it, and we do hope you can join us again on our next webinar. Again, thank you everyone and stay safe.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Linder. And once again, thank you so much, Sir Paul, for sharing your time and knowledge to us. Ayan, gusto nyo pa bang manalo? Ayan, kung na-excite kayo kanina sa ating palaro, join na kayo sa aming mga sumusunod na pa-contest. Okay, first we have this hashtag DOST-STII Library Love. Ang tanong lang pong sasagutin ninyo dito ay, what do you love about DOST-STII Library? And here are the mechanics. The contest is open to all interested participants nationwide. Each contestant should submit one entry only. Contestants will write an essay answering the question, what do you love about DOST-STII Library? The essay can be written in Filipino or English, no maximum number of words, and must be saved using MS Word. Next, submit your essay via email at library@stii.dost.gov.ph on or before the 29th of October 2021. File name shall be in the format last name underscore first name underscore middle initial underscore love. Example, De La Cruz underscore one underscore C underscore love. And by joining the contest, you are giving DOST-STI Library permission to upload your entry to its official Facebook page. To qualify, contestants must like the DOST-STI Library page at www.facebook.com/STII Library and share this post with the hashtag DOST-STII Library Love. Criteria, 15% social media impact. This is the number of reactions. 30% creativity, writing technique. And then we have, okay, hindi ko mabasa. 30% originality and 25% content. Next, we also have this fan art contest. Ayan, ang criteria po natin, you can read the mechanics in our Facebook page. Criteria is 15% social media impact, again, 30% creativity, 25% originality, 30% relevance to the theme. So may theme po tayo, that is libraries building roads, readers, opportunities, advocacies, development, and sustainability. And next is our learning at home selfie. So habang nanonood kayo ngayon, pwede na po kayong mag-selfie. Okay. And these are the criteria. 20% social media impact, number of reactions, 40% creativity, 40% originality. So yung mga isi-send nyo po sa amin, gagawan po namin siya ng social media pub. And then, doon na po kayo pwedeng mag-react. Okay? Ayan po. We also have here the book face photography. Ayan, nakikita niyo po yung example. Ayan. So, criteria, 20% social media impact. Hindi po matatanggal yan. 40% creativity. We also have here 40% originality. Ayan, okay. Now, we also have this online library literacy program where we do virtual orientation on the different services that DOST-STII offers, including how to navigate our online public access catalog and our Starbooks. So if you are interested, send your email request at library@stii.dost.gov.ph. This is for free. So you can also browse our library collection at signet.dost.gov.ph. Oh, ayan po. And now, let us hear a closing message from the Chief of the Information Resources and Analysis Division, Mr. Alan C. Taule.
Maraming salamat, Irene. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. At sa ngalan po ng DOST-STII at ng aming Head of Agency, si Director Richard Burgos, ako po ay lubos na nagpapasalamat sa mga nakilahok sa ating webinar series. Maraming salamat din po sa pagkakataong maibahagi sa inyo ang aking pangwakas na mensahe. Nais ko rin pong kunin ang pagkakataong ito upang magpasalamat sa resource speaker ngayong hapon, si Mr. Paul Jason Perez, sa kanyang mahusay at malaman na presentation sa paksang tinalakay niya. Kasama na yung masayang palitan ng tanong at kuro-kuro sa katatapos na open forum pa lamang. Sana po inyong saloobin at sariwain ang mga mahalagang konsepto na makabubuti sa inyong mga propesyon. Muli, ang aming pasasalamat, Mr. PJ Perez. Let's all give him a virtual round of applause. This is the 5th installment of the DOST-STII Library webinar series. This afternoon's topic, promoting access to library content in a changing environment, is part of the annual Learning and Development Plan of DOST-STII. The Institute is committed to continually improve the effectiveness of its quality management system at all times so that we can meet the demands of our clients and satisfy the requirements of all regulatory and statutory agencies. For this reason, it is our belief that enhancing the skills and competency of the workforce, including DOST-STII employees, is essentially valued in today's environment. Learning and development interventions and in-service training provide a strategic alignment between the DOST-STII's workforce individual learning and development goals with the broader goals of the organization. And since the third mandate of DOST-STII is to capacitate our stakeholders in STI training, we would also like to share this webinar with all of you who are eager to learn with us. Now, the objectives of this webinar are, number one, to identify best practices in data collection, management, curation and accessibility, and customize the application to current practice. Number two, to evaluate current and emerging trends in the digital data management, as well as to study relevance, feasibility, and practicality of application to the current operation. And number three, to establish access procedures and implement access policies conforming to established licenses and other agreements. In general, this webinar falls under the category of information management, which is vital in any organization because there is always a need to plan, organize, structure, and process information activities, including access to library content. Nothing is as powerful as information at the moment of value. These aspects are all required to allow organizations and their respective functional divisions that rely on the currency of information to be able to function effectively. In conclusion, We hope this webinar will be of great help to everyone in attendance today. Moreover, this L&D activity also serves as our promotional support in celebration of the 31st Library and Information Services or LIS month on November 8 to 11, 2021. So that's a little less than 2 months from now. We hope to see you once again on that date. Muli, ako ay nagpapasalamat sa lahat ng dumalo sa webinar na ito. Ito po si Alan Taule, ang inyong lingkod na nagiiwan sa inyo ng masaya at makabuluhang pagbati ng kaligtasan para sa lahat. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat.
Ayan, maraming salamat po, Sir Alan, for that powerful closing message. To be updated on our activities and services, including our upcoming webinars, please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Finally, here is the link of our evaluation form. You may take a screenshot if you cannot accomplish the form today. However, you are only given until tomorrow at 6 p.m. to answer the evaluation form. The evaluation form will be closed tomorrow at 6 p.m. Again, that's 6 p.m., 6 in the evening. Only participants who successfully accomplish the evaluation form will be provided with a certificate. Make sure that your name is correct together with your email address. We will be sending your e-certificate along with the recordings of this webinar within 10 working days. Our working days are from Mondays to Thursdays, so we do have 4-day work week from 7 a.m. in the morning to 6 p.m. in the afternoon. So we work for 10 hours in a day. In case you have accomplished the evaluation form but not have received your e-certificate after October 12, kindly send us a message through our Facebook page indicating your complete name and email address. You may also check your spam folder. The e-certificate might have been sent but did not go to your inbox. For our Zoom participants, you may leave when you are done accomplishing the feedback form. And for our panelists, may I request each one of you to open your cam for a short photo op while the rest are answering our evaluation link. Ayan. Okay, bahala na po ang ating tech team to take our picture. Okay, saglit lang daw po. Okay, first slide. You just smile po. Hindi natin alam kung anong slide tayo. Okay. Okay. Isa pa daw po. Okay, so thank you so much once again, everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar sa ating mga Facebook Live participants. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for your time, for your active participation. See you in our next webinar. Once again, this is your moderator, Miss Irene Alice Brillo saying, stay healthy, stay safe, and God bless everyone.